Okay, we are in St. Augustine. We're at the, I'm going to butcher this, the Mission Nombre de Dios, name of God. Right directly across the lawn in front of me is the shrine, and I'm not even going to begin to try to pronounce that. Loosely translated, something of milk. But it's one of the most significant shrines in Catholicism. This site, the significance of this site is that this is where Menéndez landed in 1565, where the first Thanksgiving was held, or the first Catholic or Christian services, church services, for lack of a better term, were held. In 1513, De Leon landed in Florida, named it, claimed it for Spain. He landed near here, it's believed. There's some people that say he landed down on Melbourne Beach. No one really truly knows. I mean, that's, I guess that's why you could say he landed somewhere else, because no one can refute you. I tend to go with this area, not right exactly this spot, but nearby here because of the harborage, and because Menéndez and his fleet were traveling basically in his footsteps. Now, Menéndez was born 6 years after De Leon landed here. He came here when he was in his 30s, I believe. Let's see. Yeah, he would have been 35 when he came here, and he was named basic Governor General, a whole bunch of other different kinds of titles that Spanish gave themselves to, put people in charge of whatever it was they were doing. So he was the cheese. He was the guy that come here. So when he did, he established St. Augustine, and it was right here that he landed, and right here that he established that was the first thing the Catholics did whenever they went anywhere, was to establish the church. That was the prime motivation behind getting the people to acquiesce to these missions, was saying that it was in the name of the church. And of course, there was an enormous amount of largesse motivation thrown in there as well. I mean, who wouldn't want to make money off of something? You'd be crazy not to. We're trying to be successful by being successful, getting rich. And the king wanted to be rich. That's why he was the king. He wanted more. Everybody else wanted more. So some of the lower guys were probably just coming to get a better life. So on and so forth. So it was on this ground. No one knows the exact spot. They're crazy. Hey, there's a person with a pet in violation of the no pet policy. That never happens. Here's a peacock, a very cool peacock. All the peacocks are cool, but this one happens to be cooler because he's running around here. There's a little point out there where they have this ginormous cross. That might be the area where they're saying he actually landed. But in all events, this is the basic spot. They built this shrine, not this exact one, but on this spot. This one here is the fourth incarnation of that Nombre de Dios mission. This site has been called the America's most sacred acre. Tradition holds that the first mass in the new colony was celebrated 1615. So 100 years after De Leon found the place, and 50 years after Menéndez landed, 30 years after he died, a chapel was erected to house the shrine. That's interesting. mean, we think of now as 100 years, oh, it's just 100 years, you know, whatever, but 100 years obviously is 100 daggone years. It's longer than anybody lives and longer than you would see your child live. It's a long ass time. So, and that's something else that I think is significant in looking at this site, looking at Florida in general, is, I can't go out there, there's too much wind, is when De Leon landed in 1513, between that and 1565, there was exploration on the west coast, and then, you know, certainly around the Caribbean islands, but there wasn't anything going on this coast. So it took 40 years before someone else was sent over to do it, and the reason why is because, well, one of the, not the reasons for the gap, but the reason, one of the reasons why it took so long was because of its inhospitability, inhabitability. Reports had come back from people who had been on the other coast, and even De Leon himself, who had said that this was not a place for habitation. Alligator, snakes, insects, heat, humidity, etc., etc. And as anybody that knows Florida, truly knows Florida, knows all that's true. I mean, you know, the little teeny bit of alligators and snakes we have left are nothing compared to what we have now, and or what they had then. I mean, it would have been everywhere. I mean, you can't even imagine the enormity of the population of creatures, critters, snakes, alligators, bear, panther, etc., etc. It would have been an inhospitable place for European humans, that didn't have any idea what they were doing here. So they went back. Yeah, this is not paradise. It wasn't like some of the other places that Europeans had landed in, where even though it was a harsh environment, it was still much more conducive to human life. So they basically wrote it off. But then they heard the French, and not just the French. It wasn't like the French Catholics came over, and that's cool, okay, the Catholics can have it. It was French Huguenots, the Protestant French, and that freaked them out because they considered Protestant to be heresy, a heretic. So you weren't just an unsaved unbeliever. If you were a Protestant, you were Satan's spawn, according to the Catholics. So that's it. Can't have that on our turf. So Spanish came over, established a colony. The French came over, established a colony. Spanish freaked out. Can't have that stuff. So, boom, let's go over and wipe them out. They came over, wiped them out. They created this place, got rid of all the French, and battled the English off and on for 200 years, until the Spanish empire diminished to the extent that it was no more. And they gave it back to the English, or they gave it up to the English. I shouldn't say gave it back to them. It was theirs from a European standpoint from the get-go. There was no major European power, any European powers vying for the rights to Florida. It was all the Spanish. But then eventually, you know, everybody else caught up. They got done with being up north. They wanted to come down and take over the south. That's what the English do. So they got it back, and everyone lived happily ever after. Now this is also, obviously, as you can see, a cemetery. Now, I can't find anything earlier than late 19th century as far as burials are concerned, but there are, as you can see, a lot of those. So we don't know when this was established. I can easily find out. This is pretty cool. This is the Sisters of St. Joseph. Came to St. Augustine to teach the slaves. Interred in this ground are 6 members, the sisters. Well, we've seen this in Jacksonville and a couple other places. These headstones are classic for that order, and we've seen other sisters, or not sisters, other nuns who were buried with the similar crosses and a similar designation. And it's pretty cool. So you got a neat cemetery. You got one of the most significant archaeological grounds in the world, certainly on this continent, since they don't know where Columbus actually landed. We know where this guy came, and we know what he did when he got here. And he established this city. He died in 1574, so he was only here for 10 years. But what he began opened it up, and for people to just pour in. And years later, Jamestown was founded. The Plymouth area was founded. And of course, once they got a foothold, they just spread inward. And we're going to go in this shrine. This shrine is a very serious place. It's not just a tourist place. It's a place where people seriously come to seriously pray. So it's inside. It's very quiet and sacred and all that kind of stuff. It says this is the fourth building on this foundation. Our Lady of La Leche, something of the milk. Our Lady of the Milk got me. Spanish designation is Nuestra Señora de la Leche y Buen Parto, Our Lady of the Milk and Happy Delivery. Got me. But anyway, this building goes back to 1918, so we're going to be quiet from here on out. Okay, so I thought it was really super significant of the site itself and the placard in particular that there was nothing that showed. It all shows the basic succession from accusation and trial to the cross, but it didn't show anything about the empty tomb. I thought that was very interesting. I mean, that's half the point of it, if not all the point. So anyway, there's some Civil War soldiers buried here. There's all kinds of just normal citizens and things like that. Obviously, you got to be Catholic to be here. And in the Catholic world, you would have had to have been in, and still, I guess to this day, I don't know how it works, but I've heard how it worked before. You have to be in good graces. I mean, you can't be a bad guy and be buried here. Here's a former CSA captain, and Mickler there's several Micklers over there. I thought that was kind of cool. So anyway, we're going to shut it down and move on down the road. Very cool place.